Hello, Stephen Sadler again with Money and Power, The Secret History. And I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about the famous Cuban Missile Crisis because there's a lot involved in this. And I've talked to a lot of people that were involved and had an insight into this and got the information. There's so much information now from the Freedom of Information Act that you can actually get online. I want to encourage you to do so. You know, the Cubans had Soviet missiles already set up and pointed towards the eastern seaboard when we set an invasion into motion in the Bay of Pigs, Cuba. What had happened is, apparently, the CIA had launched the invasion without telling Kennedy, and when Kennedy found out, he recalled the Air Force and the Navy, so those people that were hitting the beach didn't have the air support and the backup of those Navy ships, so they just got mowed down by the Cubans, and that made Kennedy look bad to all those people that were involved and got a lot of people upset that were involved. And it also got Kennedy very angry with those that would kind of go around him or circumvent his authority because they were so concerned that they had to get Cuba back before it was too late. He actually was going to fire Allen Dulles, which is interesting because Allen Dulles was the guy that headed up the Warren investigation to the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and he was getting fired by John F. Kennedy, which would seem to be, well, at the very least, a conflict of interest to do an investigation. But the point being, years later when they interviewed Castro, obviously we recalled the troops and the invasion didn't proceed. Castro had stated publicly, look, we had armed missiles pointed at New York, Washington, all up and down the seaboard. We were going to fire them. And the generals that were there from the Soviet Union stated later that they were definitely going to launch those missiles at the United States. So President Kennedy actually averted a nuclear war, missiles actually being fired at the United States, by talking to Russia and by talking to Cuba, Castro, and letting him know that they weren't going to proceed with this investigation. If we'd let the CIA go off on its own and make the decision, we might not all be here. So this is one of those little points of history that don't show up in the history books, and I think every American needs to not believe me, but go look this stuff up for yourself. Become a true citizen. Be responsible. It's interesting too.